Zeta Halo, otherwise known as Installation 07, is one of the most significant rings in the galaxy with a sick and twisted history that could indicate how the narrative might lead into Halo Infinite. With there being a lot of information that the general fanbase might not know due to it being on the deeper side of the lore in the books and other forms of media, I figured I would collate my usual top 7, but this time about the top 7 facts about Zeta Halo that you should know about.
Ultimate Halo.
Hey up lads and lasses, Fletch here from Ultimate Halo, and thank you so much for tuning in. And we are nearly at that 80,000 mark, we're so close, so subscribing will help out the channel immensely. And also I do want to know in the comment section down below, in Halo Infinite, if you could visit one planet, what would it be and why? Let's start a discussion. The first fact on this list is something that we are strongly believed at this point is alluded to in the Halo Infinite reveal trailer. As we saw the world unfold, the story, and seeing the results of the goings on in the environment, we were brought through a cave with some mysterious writing on. At first, a lot of us thought it looked slightly Forerunner, and I did the same as well because some of the similarities between the symbols are very close. However, as a community we've all come to the conclusion that they are most likely human scribes, more specifically ancient human, to which we're yet to decipher. At this point, we know it's fairly well known that humanity, more specifically Homo sapiens, were a spacefaring race before they were de-evolved as part of their punishment after the human-Forerunner war. But there was also common ancestors to the humans named the Florians. They were a much smaller species, just standing over a metre tall on average. They had a reduced mandible, they were lacking in chins, and they were also rather hairy, with most of their bodies and faces being absolutely covered in it, as well as a keen sense of smell, especially compared to Homo sapiens. Now, despite their sizes, Florians were still rather intelligent beings. The Didact of all people even described them as peaceful, yet full of cleverness, which, knowing his hatred for humans, is certainly a pretty big compliment. Another benefit of this species was that their lifespan lasted hundreds of years. The Florian named Riser in the Halo book Halo Krypton was described as a youngster at the age of 200 years old. They can also be compared to Homo florensis, which they were extinct tens of thousands of years ago in our own timeline on Earth. And another fact is that they were also referred to as hobbits in real life in reference to the Lord of the Rings due to their small size. So it is entirely possible that they could also be the ones that were responsible for the engravings on the wall in Halo Infinite, as they were present on Zeta Halo at some point in its history, but only time will tell. Speaking of humanity on Zeta Halo, the ring was also a place for unspeakable atrocities to humanity, with experiments including the Flood, as the Forerunners were forced into desperation to find a cure for the parasites. Humans referred to a testing facility as the Palace of Pain, where the humans were taken to see if they could be infected by the Flood, and the Forerunners tested them, turning them into vile Flood forms, which can actually be seen in the Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer map Lockouts. Here we can see deformed, mutated bodies, and the pain these ancient humans must have endured would have been horrific. It was rare that they would ever come back to their families, except for a few rare instances. But the search for the Flood cure was futile at the time because the Flood were intentionally only infecting Forerunners, as there was enough of a proto-Gravemind hive intelligence to start taking place. And also, speaking of proto-Graveminds, at one stage there were at least 10 on the ring prior to the firing of the Halo array. One common thought people have about the Halo array is that they were all made around the same time, with 7 rings that are known to be active in the galaxy today. Well, that isn't actually true. Initially, the Master Builder, otherwise known as Faber, commissioned 12 rings, each were 30,000 kilometers in diameter, which were built at the Greater Arc. Now, there were some issues with the rings and their designs due to some impracticalities and certain defects. However, Faber did actually commission a new arc, which is now the Lesser Arc, where the rings in service today were actually created. But prior to all of this, Installation 07 was taken over by the Primordial and Mendicant bias, a Forerunner AI that had been infected by the Logic Plague from the Primordial. Eventually, they transported the ring to the Forerunner capital of Maythrillion, where a battle would end up ensuing. The ring would then subsequently take massive damage and Mendicant Bias had to retreat to the edge of the galaxy. Once a fleet led by the ISO Didact appeared, the Didact managed to shut down Mendicant Bias. Due to the damage, the ring could not be saved as a whole, so the Didact ordered the installation to be reduced in size whilst keeping the important sections of the ring. In doing this and reducing the size, it also meant that repairs could be carried out at the lesser arc. Then the ring was reduced to the size of 10,000 kilometers, which is in line with the other rings in the final Halo array. Installation 07 is now a place where we're starting to see it's full of history, and it also keeps giving in terms of the significant events that took place on the ring. As mentioned previously, Mendicant Bias is a Forerunner Contender class AI. It was truly the most advanced Forerunner AI of the time of its creation, and it was tasked with test firing the ring at the planet Charum Hakor, but a subsequent result of the test fire was that it also leveled many of the precursor structures on the planet and unexpectedly freed an ancient being known as the Primordial from an archaic gravemind who claimed to be the last precursor. Eventually it was brought to Zeta Halo for study, where the AI was in conversation to understand it for 43 years. Mendicant Bias tried to understand its weaknesses, but instead was infected by the Logic Plague, which resulted in it being defected to the Flood, and from there it resulted in the Forerunner Flood War spiraling out of control. For more on the Logic Plague though, I do recommend HiddenXperia's short video, which is also in the description. At this point I have explained how humanity was on the ring with their cousins the Florians. However, much like the other Halo rings, there was a wealth of biological specimens, and in particular to note the flora and fauna seen is not too dissimilar to the ones we know on Earth, or previously known as Erde Tyrene. Such animals include bees, mosquitoes, rabbits, bats and scorpions. However, when you look back at the Halo Infinite reveal trailer, some of you may have looked at the rhinos and the deer and thought, hold on, they're very Earth-like, with the exception of some small variations in features such as their horns and their antlers, and the likely reason for this is because they shared ancestors and were the very same from Earth but preserved on the ring, and obviously had to evolve differently because the topography and the nature is of course slightly different. So with that in mind, it does actually make sense if we were to see many more creatures in the environment that were similar to the ones that we see on our very own planet Earth today. Prior to Halo Infinite, we do actually have knowledge about this ring. Owner in recent years, much like the other Halo rings, have set research stations in the main goal to find and contain the activation index so that the ring can be decommissioned. Heading the project was Dr. Bob Casper, and he, along with 300 other scientists including Dr. Luther Mann, who is an expert in Forerunner and Sangheili languages and culture. The topography is also well known on the ring, as deep scans have already taken place, and eventually, due to their difficulty in finding the control room as well as some other noticeable differences on a meta level, it was concluded that the ring was made at a different time, or was even a prototype to the other rings, which we all know that they're actually not far off. During this project, catastrophe was also avoided, where on 8th of March 2555 Dr. Mann discovered a countdown sequence in a corridor connected to one of the ring's atmosphere and climate control centres. Eventually the teams did manage to stop the countdown as it was due to fire in a matter of weeks, and research, as far as we know, still continues to this very day. Lastly, Zeta Halo, much like all other installations, has its own monitor, the Caretaker. This monitor is known as simply 117649, and yes, you're right in noticing that the service tag is sharing similarities to the Chiefs. Another reason for this is because 117649 is also 7 raised to the power of 6. Of course, Bungie had an obsession with the number 7 back in the day. But what's different about this monitor is that its presence is actually unknown. Typically, a monitor is always quick to show its appearance and engage with visitors, or at the very least make some form of communication. However, not for monitor 117649. Dr. Luther Mann has raised the possibility that it knows of humanity and the Covenant's history when it comes to engaging with Halo rings, and rather than actually engaging the humans, it has rather taken heed of this and decided to remain silent to ensure that the ring remains safe. Ultimately, we don't know the exact reason just yet, however it's quite possible that Halo Infinite will shed some light so we can learn more about it. So that's all we have today on Zeta Halo. I hope you all really enjoyed it because this video had a lot of love poured into it, and I'd like to know in the comments which planet would you like to see in Halo Infinite and why. As always, my name is Jack Fletcher and I will see you next time on the one and the only Ultimate Halo.
Subscribe now to Ultimate Halo for more unfriggin' believable Halo content.